Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday. My joy and pleasure to be here with you. Um, so, today, I guess the most pithy sort of discussions that you can have is who am I and what is this all about? It's the biggest question of all time. The greatest philosophers in the world have dwelled on that question. Um, Centered in the middle of that question is when you ask, who am I? This idea of I is the central issue. That, yes, there's ordinary me, and then there's sort of deep collective unconscious cosmic I. And exposing that part of myself, or being able to figure out how to reach that part of myself, is pretty much what meditation practices from around the world since the beginning of time have been all about. Spiritual practices to wake up and find out the nature of the soul. Religions have grown around this idea in every culture on earth. So, it was not without a certain amount of trepidation that I touched this subject with a 10-foot pole, because it's sort of too broad and too vast to even know where to start or where it's going to go. We're trying to find out the collective I, a deeper version of our global identity as an I that transcends personal self. The bigger idea behind these live streams, that opening this door to try to change something about reality that could transform it into something that is closer to a vision of peace and prosperity and perfection is the great yearning of the soul. To form a more perfect union among us, to express the grand sort of cosmic I that we all have a piece of, that we are all a piece of. So this concept of the great cosmic I am, and have that be enough, and have the I amness of I am be before these words formed into language and got expressed. This concept of being simultaneous now with the present, where there is no time to form the thought of a word and then communicate it through all the channels necessary to get my mouth and my tongue and my vocal cords to do something. That sort of I am. We discussed this before with the Gurdjieff's book, Life is Real Only Then When I Am. That everything else is a sort of a curlicue, a baroque on the end of reality, that in a sort of a Zen way, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The the only difference between those two is the simplicity of chopping wood and carrying water now in the present moment simultaneously with it versus having considerations and definitions and feelings about, and do I want to be someplace else, and how long is this going to take, and my back hurts, and all the rest. Those kind of considerations spin in neurons firing in the brain, and the brain has interpretations of that and spews those interpretations into some other compartment, who then communicates with other compartments, and the mental faculty of observing something physically going on and emotional sort of feelings about what I feel about that are a baroque on the end of reality, an unnecessary appendage, a sort of a waste of time, when, sort of time doesn't even exist. So it's a sort of a double whammy up the side of the head. There's something that immediately occurs someplace inside when when you raise the concept of I am. It's primal, it's spiritual, it's infinite, it's ancient, it has no beginning and no end. It's the primal force of everything. And the greatest philosophers of all time have considered and racked their brains and come up with entire philosophies to describe what they believe it's all about, the quest for the meaning of the soul. The great philosophers of all time, Socrates and Plato, wrote whole books and treatises and taught forums about the quest for the meaning of the soul, of I, and the expression of I into amness. I am. Aristotle, in his discourses, the greatest thinkers of all time have pondered this question. It's a question that arises in the great minds and in a certain subsection of society. There are those of us who ponder these questions, and there are those of us who do not. It's the 80-20 rule that I've discussed before, that the bell curve seems to be the rule of the day in the universe. Statistics seem to always prevail. 80% of the people on the bell curve are this way. 20% of the people out on the edges are this other way. We are sort of this other way. And even in that 20%, I take that 20% over here, and that also conforms to bell curves. 80% of that 20% are this way, and 20% of that 20% are another way completely. Real innovators, inspiration and true something comes through those people. Something original, something, the real leaders, the spiritual leaders, perhaps. But throughout all of time and all of these great thinkers, stretching backwards and backwards and backwards, there is a consensus that begins to become apparent when you sort of scan the whole landscape of all the greatest thinkers of all time who've pondered this idea. Back to the most ancient books that we've seen in Mesopotamia and the Middle and Far East, in Sanskrit, 4,000-year-old texts that attempt to describe this, in the holy books, the Upanishads and the Sutras of Patanjali, and even in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, where Christ is having a discussion and they're saying, who are you? Who do you think you are? Spouting all these cosmic truths. Aren't you the carpenter's son from up the street? And they're going, how can you have the audacity to challenge the truths of Abraham? And that's where Christ says, before Abraham was, I am, which shows the timeless nature of I am. Before anything and everything, I am. And that means I am now as well, which means that's sort of an eternity brought into the present. You guys know you're in trouble when I start spouting biblical texts. But these ideas are huge, and they're deep, and they're forever. I mean, one of the greatest heroic stories of all time, Gilgamesh, on the greatest heroic quest of all time to find out the nature of self, to find out who he was, the search for soul, conquering demons to find it. The Egyptians had a whole cosmology of what was the soul. But for them, it seemed to be complex and compartmentalized. The Kahet, which was the physical body, Tha, the spiritual body, Ren, the name, your name, Ba, your personality, Ka, the vital essence, the part of you that is the living animation of your body, versus someone who's dead who has no Ka. Ka's not there anymore. The Ib, the heart, the Shut, the shadow, and Sekhem, the life force of the soul. All very well laid out and in great ceremonial procedure when a person died, so that they could survive in the afterlife. I remember having a personal experience with Ka at one point. I talked, I think, in the last live stream about being in chiropractic school and having all of the anatomy and physiology diagrams that are all nice and neat. Learning all the muscles and the joints and wiring diagram of the brain and all the rest of that. And then ending up in human dissection lab with the real body in front of you, and we're all freaking out. And I remember that we're all standing around our metal table. There's metal tables spread throughout this huge room, 160 students in groups of, I think, 10 or something. So the professor is saying, all right, so open up your bag. And we're all ready for this now. So we zip this bag open and pull it open. And all of this that you've been building up for is now sort of blown away, because this guy was on his stomach. So all you saw was sort of back with some hairs on it. So it was kind of like, okay. And we said, our body is upside down. It's like face down. The guy says, well, turn it over. And we're going, yeah, what? I mean, yeah, turn it over. So now we're all wrestling with this dead, quote, dead weight body to try to turn it over. What a trip that was. And then when we get him on his back, his face is like squashed flat because he's been laying flat on his face. So his nose is squashed over. And so now it's like, this isn't what I was expecting at all. And in that moment, when I could see this person's body in front of me, the whole body, the face and the head and the body, I had a moment where I realized that I had a sixth sense that I didn't know about. The five senses, yes. This sixth sense wasn't something I knew I had, and it was the sense of ka, the sense of sensing a life energy in something that is living. I knew that I had this sense all of a sudden because in front of me was the absence of ka, the absence of life. And it was a shocking thing. It was sort of like thinking that you're going to grab something and finding that it's just smoke and air and there's nothing there. So there's something in me that's reaching its hands out to feel the life force in this body, and it's coming up with air. There's nothing there. It's like this part of me is like, this is weird. What's this? And at that moment, on the presupposed freak out that I was expecting to have with a dead body in front of me, didn't happen at all. What happened was coming in contact with a part of me that recognizes life in other things that I didn't know I had. Because you can't know you have it until you find something that's got no life in it. And all of our lives are filled with people who are in things that are alive. I mean, so it's not until you see your first dead person that it gets to you, that you understand. So that sort of idea of my personal experience with the absence of ka, the absence of the vital essence, something missing. In more contemporary times, in my book, Carl Jung stands out among all the others because he was the true sort of scientific mind, where he freely explored realms that his contemporaries and colleagues rejected, or wouldn't think twice about going there, or wouldn't go there at all. And that was the Eastern esoteric ideas, or ideas coming from all over the world about anything and everything. He accepted all of those. He had a whole interesting treatise on the I Ching. He wrote the introduction to the I Ching, the Wilhelm Baines edition that I've talked about here before. He embraced that idea because the I Ching provided a possibility of gaining direct access to the metaphors and images of the unconscious mind by tricking it into seeing pictorial diagrams, these hexagrams that inferred some kind of a broad swath of ability to interpret these images. The same thing with the tarot. The idea that the tarot decks, this is the original Mercier deck from France, but the idea that these cards, each one has images images that speak to the unconscious mind. And to read the cards correctly, you allowed the sort of critical rational functions of the ordinary brain to let go and relax, and allow the subconscious mind to do the interpretation, what the image on that card means, and why the fact that you happen to have gotten that card is very close to the idea of what the I Ching is trying to communicate. That when you toss the coins or the yarrow stalks and you get a hexagram, and then you look that hexagram up in the book, and it applies to the question you asked, and it applies to the circumstance you're in presently in your life, and gives you a solution, a path through it, that the adherents of the I Ching go, yes, you know, if you just picked any of those hexagrams and read it, it could perhaps apply. However, that's not what happened here. You got the only hexagram that you could possibly have gotten, because every iota of smallest particle in the universe that is here right now is a necessary part of the puzzle piece to make this what it is. That what is a reflection of everything that's in it, including that hexagram. So the hexagram, by definition, is the only one that could have arisen in this moment, because that's the one you got. It's a distillation, like a fractal hologram, of a representation in miniature of the whole situation. And there are many diagrams like this. When I went on a search looking for them, it was pretty complex. Everybody's got their idea. The concept of the self, and out here in the outer world, the personality that other people see, your ego and the persona that you put forth, your sort of external consciousness. You know, the persona you put forth is the masks you wear for different people. I have a mask when I go to work. I have a mask for my lover. I have a mask for my son. I have a mask for the grocery store. I'm different people for different situations. Their persona. Some places, the unchanging part of me, the deep self that is here forever, there's the unconscious mind, the personal unconscious mind, and the collective unconscious mind down underneath here. The collective unconscious mind that we are trying to attempt to connect with by melding our minds all together in this mind link, using the science of brain entrainment and binaural beats to synchronize our brains all together to the same exact state, place in consciousness, to align that way. Collective unconscious contains the whole spiritual heritage of mankind's evolution, born anew in the brain structure of every individual. This was all part of his whole idea about, in the introduction to the I Ching, he discusses this, where whether past lives exist or not is immaterial. He dealt with it all the time with his patients. He moved forward. This person had a belief that past lives were real. Then he went with that, because now he's got a tool that he could use for them to dig into their past memories in the unconscious mind, which is populated by dream imagery, allegorical and metaphorical imagery. And if the allegory and metaphor that your own unconscious mind requires to be a pharaoh in Egypt, someplace that you believe you were that in a past lifetime, so be it. As long as it provides the environment for you to get some work done on the inside and resolve some issue through the metaphor and dream imagery of you being an Egyptian pharaoh, so be it. Who cares? That was his attitude. Who cares if past lives exist or not. We're never going to really be able to find out. It's subjective experience. The only reason that it's important is because you could use that to get some work done on the inside and resolve issues, so you're a better person and a more balanced person and a more healed person. He did have the idea that that I'm the result of my mother and father coming together, 23 chromosomes from each. And it was his belief that the 46 chromosomes that result from that in the DNA is the Library of Alexandria for any person. It's all the history of all the ancestors, all their memories and all their experiences in infinite level of detail, all recorded on sort of microfilm back to the beginning of time. So I'm one that came from two. Each of those is one that came from two. And each of those is one that came from two. So it's 1, 2, 4, 16, 32, 64. It's an exponential of people at the base of my pyramid that I stand at the top of. I'm the most recent expression. But all those people that stood before me, every single one of them was necessary in the grand story of my larger self, the expression of my ancestors. In China, it was called the patriarchs. But quickly, if you add those numbers up, just a number of generations ago, there was like 1 million people standing at the base of your pyramid. And but the further back you go in time in history on the earth, the lesser and lesser number of people were on the planet. But when you go through your personal genealogical tree, the numbers get huge very quickly. That at the base of my pyramid is 1 million people, and there's 8 billion people on Earth, and they've all got 1 million people at the base of the pyramid. Those numbers don't add up. The further back in time you go, the less number of people were here. It doesn't make sense unless everybody's pyramids cross over each other and share common ancestors, where we are truly all one family. We all come from the same genetic stock. We are all brothers and sisters. And that means that when my genetic trace in my subconscious mind can trace back through all the memories down through that genealogical tree where 1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 16, when I cross over your pyramid, I get access to all of your ancestors' memories from that point back. That means I potentially have the ability in the deep unconscious mind to access the life story and memory of anyone who's ever existed in the past, in every culture on the planet, back to the beginning of time of our species. That's what he was talking about in the introduction of the I Ching. Out of all of that is swirling the collective I am that persists. The amness is all of my ancestors marching through the greatest story of all time, and I'm the most recent sentence of that great book. Like I said before, we've all got masks that we wear for every occasion. I'm a different person when I look in the mirror. It's probably part of the reason why I'm so fascinated by my collection of masks back on the wall there from all these different countries all over the world. The masks that we wear in order to interact with other people in other situations. And then that brought us into the great consciousness revolution that happened in the 60s. And I was smack dab in the middle of it. I was part of that experience. I experienced it directly. And I wasn't just an ordinary person on the sidelines. I was an artist going to art school in the 60s. I was a musician, a composer, a filmmaker, an artist, a sculptor. I was deeply into that world. Many people like this artist, Alex Gray, went on all these different acid and mushroom trips like many of the rest of us were doing in the search for the meaning of your life, in the search for soul, the search for the elusive I am. That's what that whole consciousness explosion was all about. These sacred alkaloid spiritual medications that have arisen in every culture on the planet, usually always protected by sort of the shamans and the priesthood and the holy ones and their initiates. The regular people came to them for understanding and teaching, but they communed directly with the eye of the universe and went on Gilgamesh journeys of their own and came back with information. And information about how to heal, information about how to use plants, because you melded with the plant consciousness and the plant revealed to you which plants are good for this and that. It's where you begin to realize, like in Paracelsus back in, I think, the 14th century, who was a great healer, talked about the fact that you sit in the meadows and the fields and you meditate on the plants there, and you realize that the plants grow in the shape of the organ that they heal. It's a pretty cool idea. But this whole period of the consciousness revolution that these sort of sacred medications unlocked for people changed a whole generation, changed everything. It was the origin of return, to the planet, save the planet, consciousness of water, the sacredness of the earth, rallying against pollution and corruption, and that taboo against knowing who you are. Doesn't serve the big money-making machines of the world to have too many people waking up and questioning the cubicle that they're working in and the amount of money they're getting per hour. Tripping on acid doesn't make a good worker. It wakes you up. Something happens. You break out of, the box that you've been planted in and educated to be in, so you can be a good worker in a cubicle and not question authority, is completely blown out of a nuclear bomb blast goes off and it's all laid to waste. And what remains is I am. That's what remains. Something so deep and so profound and so ancient, where all the answers to all the questions are there simultaneously in the present moment. There is everything laid bare and easy to see. That you don't come back from that experience back into the regular world the same person you were before. Something profound and different has happened. Look at this guy, Timothy Leary. He was like the big guy. Here's Timothy Leary right here. This guy was a Harvard professor of psychiatry. And then when Bruno Hoffman stumbled on LSD in his lab and had his first trip riding a bicycle home, the cat was out of the bag. And the next thing you know, psychiatrists like Timothy Leary were using psychedelics in a clinical setting and seeing profound healings of all kinds of mental disorders and depressions and stuff like that. Profound. They knew that they were onto something big, that this was a game changer. And then taking it themselves, they realized how deep that change actually went, that the blinders were taken from your eyes and you could see everything in stark clarity. Every smallest little thing that you overlook is shining in the glory of existing. The fact that you exist is a mind blower, and that's what seems to be sort of passed over, not noticed. So that changed him. Yeah, I mean, look at this guy, and now he's this guy. Something profound has shifted in the consciousness of this man, from this to that, to that. Something profound has taken place in the consciousness and the awareness of this person. Look at these two guys. Here's Timothy Leary. Here's Dr. Richard Albert, his colleague at Harvard, both professors and both psychiatrists, and both using psychedelic therapy with patients, and then beginning to experiment with it on their own and having life-changing experiences. So Richard Albert, I mean, he becomes this guy, Baba Ram Dass. He quits his whole world and enters into a completely different world. A seeker after truth, a pilgrim on the way. He becomes this guy. I met him a couple of times. I went to a few of his gatherings that he would, all these people would be crowded around, sitting around, and he would start it out like this and then start talking and tell his story. It was a mind blower, his story. His transformation from that guy to this guy. Something deeply profound has happened to this man. That face, those eyes, something has awakened there that's permanent, that will never be the same. There's no going back to that guy anymore. This was a mask that this guy wore, and this guy had a nuclear explosion that melted all masks away. And then there was this guy, Gunther Weil, who was with the two of them. As a matter of fact, he was the one. So he's another psychiatrist at Harvard, a professor with them in the 60s, who started the psilocybin research project. Same thing happened to this guy. Now, I knew this guy personally because we were at the Gurdjieff group together in upstate New York. So I did that episode that I talked about Gurdjieff and all these people that were there who had arrived from different parts of the country. Nobody knew who anybody was. I mean, we were just all people there, seekers after truth, learning about how to discover the essence of yourself, a technique, a technology that Gurdjieff had brought back from the 20s. We were just people. And then when you get to know people, you realize that, this guy's like a psychiatrist, Harvard professor who started the psilocybin project in the 60s along with Timothy Leary. You're going, really? Wow. And This other guy who I became a good friend with used to, he's an electronics engineer. He used to build the cockpits for 737 aircraft. Another guy used to work for NASA. These are no slouches. And in order to stay where they were in this group, they started plumbing companies and construction companies and a company downtown that repaired your VCR on your television set, who used to install cockpits and 747s. I mean, all of those diplomas on the wall had no meaning anymore. Something much more profound and much more important was afoot: the search for the meaning of my soul and the meaning of my life, and being able to touch into that part of me that would lead me to this in myself. That's what we were all looking for. The barn, 17 acres in upstate New York, with a giant barn and a bunch of outbuildings. And this barn was completely transformed on the inside into a massive kitchen and dining room downstairs with many, many rooms and offices. Upstairs was a massive, giant space with that the group put hardwood floors and a giant round window at one end with an enneagram. And upstairs is where they did the movements with large groups, right? 50 people lined up in rows doing movements, with a grand piano in the corner. It's an astounding period. All of them under the leadership of one of the closest nucleus of students around Gurdjieff himself, this man over here, Willem Nyland. He became my teacher, that my experiences with him changed my life. All of the very cool ideas and all the charts and the diagrams and all the other good, cool stuff that you could ever come up with to explain ego and self and unconscious and all that other stuff means nothing unless you do something practical to wake yourself up. So the question was always, what did you do today? Tell me about how your day went, as far as you trying to slap yourself awake, to realize all of a sudden in the midst of what you're doing, oh, I'm asleep. Oh my God, I'm a robot. Right now is a good opportunity that I could use right this second to come to myself, be here now, chop wood, carry water, and be here, present with myself, and open up something deeper. Without the practical spirituality, the practical application of doing something on a regular basis and working it into my daily life, do I have a hope or a prayer of solidifying something in myself that is I am, that I strengthen that muscle by working it all the time? It's not just something that I delegate to a pillow in a meditation room upstairs for an hour a night or 30 minutes in the evening, and the rest of my day is something else. So, no, it's the most serious thing that you can be involved in is the greatest heroic journey of all time, like Gilgamesh, to find how to open the door to your deeper self and wake up in this world and have a full realization of the grandness of being alive. And so I went through that eye of the needle myself. I you know, um, dropped everything after I graduated from art school and moved to New York, to the center, to where the barn was, to experience what was going on there. I never looked upon myself as a joiner. I've always been one of those weird people way out the tippy end of the 20%. I never quite fit in with the crowd. Um, I was there to see what Gurdjieff's teachings could that I could use to help me. I was never a sort of a Gurdjieffite, um, but I remained there for 9 years and had the most intense spiritual experiences of my life, transformational. And I left when Nyland died, Willem Nyland, this guy, my teacher, Willem Nyland. He died in 1977. And later that year, I went to chiropractic school. And then my journey took me here, speaking to you today. My journey took me into the whole world of sound and composing. My life fractured big time. And after I went to chiropractic school and graduated, I moved to San Diego, here where I am now, 1988. Opened up a huge center because when I sold my house and sold my practice, I had a bundle of money. I'm going to go and I'm going to do this sound thing full time. I have the means to do it, and I'm going to do it. So I go to California, this huge set of buildings built on 3 different levels with all kinds of different offices, psychotherapists and a chiropractor and a massage therapist, and me, sound sphere research, hypnotherapy, healing services. I mean, this is like a yoga place, Vogel Institute, a float space, float tanks, Mystical Dragon bookstore. I mean, all of this was there. It was exciting, amazing time. I leased a huge suite. I built this desk myself. This round skylight right up here, I built this structure in there, which is 9 enneagrams rotated to 9 positions, all superimposed on top of each other, which created a very unique and cool shadow pattern when the sun shone through there. These pictures, by the way, were sent to me by one of the people who came to that center, Brainwaves Research. It was a mind spa with all of the different devices that people were using in the 80s for the technological version of the 60s of expanding consciousness with science. Light and sound machines and something called the reflection chamber and binaural beat soundtracks. I was in that world. So these pictures were sent to me by somebody. So I've got these pictures now because all the pictures I have, I haven't been able to find them. So here's these. This was Maureen, somebody I hired to be our front desk person. I built these things out of plywood. This is a futon I had custom made. And when you got inside this thing, super comfortable, and this bamboo curtain would slide down on these little rails, and you would be in this cool little enclosure, and the light filtering through this bamboo curtain would create all kinds of light, dark stripe patterns of shadows. It's all a very cool place to be. And inside there were headphones and light and sound machines, so you could put these light glasses on and have a psychedelic experience that would put you in a different space. This was called the reflections chamber, which was a huge cubicle box that you would sit inside of, covered with mirrors. So you'd see reflections of yourself to infinity in every direction you looked. And these light bars up here could be controlled by a control panel on the wall that would make them flash at different brainwave frequency speeds, so you could have the same effect as the light glasses, except without the glasses. You close that door and you're in this magical infinity space. Here's a picture of me back in those days. This would have been looking at probably 1989, maybe 1990. The madman in his laboratory. All kinds of newspaper articles, full-page newspaper articles, and big pictures were done. I became a very famous guy. Mind Gems, Brainwave of the Future, Jeffrey Thompson. These jacuzzis of the mind claim to provide an anodyne for the stressed-out 80s. Instant peace of mind using nothing you ingest, inhale, or can go to prison for. Wow. Jeffrey Thompson, in one of his salon's state-of-the-art mind-altering spaces. In this particular room, that ceiling there had clouds painted on it, but when you turned the lights out, there was 1,000 fiber optic stars. So it absolutely looked like a real night sky. And I had speakers around that room for piping in 3D nature sounds, nighttime nature sounds. It was pretty cool. This was another newspaper article. Dr. Jeffrey Thompson in the Star Chamber at the Center for Total Health in Solana Beach says brain workouts open up new channels of self-awareness. So you would sit in this chamber, start these lights flashing, say at theta, and look straight ahead into the mirror in front of you and look right here at your third eye center. And out of peripheral vision, you would see yourself to infinity everywhere, from every possible angle of yourself, above and all around forever. But you would be looking here, and those lights would be flashing. And there's a yoga meditation technique where you look at yourself in the mirror like that, or you look at a candle flame, or you sit in front of a blank wall and look and pick a spot and look there and don't blink, don't move your eyes. So in this chamber, not blinking and not moving your eyes and looking straight here, first you reach what I call the first intention gate, because it becomes all of a sudden very hard to keep your eyes open because you feel like you need to blink. And your brain is shouting at you, if you don't blink, you're going to screw your eyes up. They're going to dry out and all kinds of problems are going to happen. You're going to go blind. And that's not what happens at all. If you don't blink, your eyes start to water. They cleanse themselves anyway. And once you get past that point, you come out the other side, that need to blink goes away. And immediately your aura pops out. There's this sort of a molten golden glow that you can see that is very small around your body. And then you get to the second intention gate, and you go through the same process again, and then your eyes start to water, and this pops bigger. And it's popping so big that your face is sort of the faceless, molten, golden light that you can kind of see your facial features popping in and out of. And then the third intention gate the faces that are coming back and forth are all the masks. There's old masks and baby masks and young masks and male masks and female masks and angelic masks and demonic masks. And then the next intention gate is animal masks, wolf masks and bear masks. And it's this whole thing is sort of happening in this crazy mirrored box with the lights flashing at brainwave speeds. All of it part of the never-ending quest of humanity to find out the nature of my soul, find out the deep place of heaven inside myself, my cosmic place of safety and joy, where I can truly relax and be 100% myself. No games to me to be played, nothing I have to pretend to be to look good in someone else's eyes or even my own eyes. All of that has fallen away. The ancients, the indigenous, they knew. The Aborigines, there's still a prehistoric tribe of people who exist today, still using the old practices, the whole concept of dream time, entering in between the worlds. Once again, and using sound to do it, the didgeridoo, the sound tools to awaken yourself to your deeper part, your part where you realize your symbiosis with all living things. These ceremonies of dream time and walking the spaces between realities. These ceremonial practices that every culture has used. And the Aborigines, the dream time is the walking the place between worlds, populated by the metaphors and the allegories of the unconscious mind. I mean, look at these paintings. This is the stuff that comes from that. Like pure psychedelica, right? Straight from the 60s. Amazing stuff. And this is our ancient ancestors. These are the Stone Age, you know, deeply spiritual and connected to the cosmos. Cavemen, right? And then there was these artists like Alex Gray who went there and came back and painted what they experienced. And those of us who went there also recognize these paintings and say, yeah, I was there. I saw that. I experienced that. You speak to me. It's what I do without painting is what I do with music. My soundtracks are shamanic journeys. I'm not making pleasing music. I'm making multi-layered soundtracks that are designed to change your state of consciousness, to put you on a journey, a spiritual journey, a journey of experiencing things. But these paintings that Alex Gray bought back, unbelievable, anatomically perfect, with all the meridians and all the nerves and all the blood vessels. It's just mind-blowing, really. And this is what you experience, except inside your own body, in a way that's impossible to describe. Mescaline and psilocybin and ayahuasca all have these transformational experiences where you walk between worlds, and when you come back to this world, you can see through it in a way that you couldn't before. And sound has traditionally been the number one primary tool, high-tech tool for awakening consciousness in every culture. In India, it's the idea of Krishna blowing a flute. The sound causes the awakening. The personal self, the Atman. But the origin of all of it was Nadia Brahma. The world is sound. The world arose from sound, from vibration. The Om, the humming, the vibration that formed all worlds. Pranava, the universal sound, the sound you would hear if you were still enough to hear the entirety of existence at once. It's the big Om sound. And Brahman, the ultimate self of all selves, that Atman is just one piece of, Atman just one piece of, all of it in a dream of Brahman, an infinite number of worlds populated by an infinite number of beings of every size and shape that you could ever imagine, living all the stories that could ever be throughout time and space. The grand, multifaceted dream of the Godhood. And in the center of all that sound is the Soham, I am that I am. It's as simple as that. Universe exists within me as much as I exist in the universe. It's this chicken and egg thing. It's the yin-yang thing. It's me and I. It's personal reality and infinite reality. It's time and space. It's male and female. It's and now, of course, science is banging on this door. My newsfeed's constantly got articles about new discoveries about consciousness and quantum consciousness and the quantum field. The nature of reality is dependent on consciousness arriving to witness. Here's one. Sense of self, the brain structure that holds the key to I. It's this area right here called the precuneus cortex. You can see that the two hemispheres have been pulled apart, and this is on the inside of the brain. I just happen to have one, and so if we pull this brain apart, shall I get it the same side of the brain as this picture? So you can see that it's this zone right over here, the insula. This is where the sense of I happens, according to the latest research in science. The precuneus cortex. A brain structure holding the key to I, a sense of self. A small brain structure, the anterior precuneus, or APCU, has been identified as a crucial component of our physical self, or I. The APCU is part of a network of brain regions that integrate information concerning our location, motion, body sensations to shape our self-awareness. When electrical activity in the APCU is disrupted, altered perceptions of one position in the world are experienced by individuals. The anterior precuneus, or APCU, in the brain plays a crucial role in forming our physical sense of self, or I, as revealed by Stanford medicine. When activity in APCU is disrupted, people's perception of their place in the world dramatically change. The APCU works as part of a network of brain regions that integrate various types of body information. And the article goes on to show diagrams of all the connections of the APCU with the default mode network and the salient section of perception, and all of those coming together to give my sense of self, my sense of I, my sense of place in time and space. But it all falls short, doesn't it? I mean, the place where I is experienced is not coming from a place in the brain, but it's a hologram. It's a fractal that when I experience the deeper, real sense of I, a section of my brain lights up because of that, but it's not the other way around. A section of my brain fires some neurons and I get a sense of I. That's what these guys are talking about, and that's not the way it works at all. All the great thinkers and the most ancient texts in the universe, in the world, back to the beginning of the written word, talk about this. Talk about the fact that consciousness forms the brain and not the other way around. So it's a bit funny and pretentious for science to say, hey, we discovered where, a sense of I comes from, and it's here. And no, my sense of I as an experience lights up a part of my cortex as a response to that. Or maybe it's a chicken egg thing, another yin yang, because all of it is part of the same thing. It's all one thing. It's not like I have a body over here and myself over here. It's all a homogeneous whole that happens before a thought. Thinking is happening in this kind of shadow, unreal realm. So we have reality in the present moment that's happening now, and we have thinking about that over here, which is not now, which means it doesn't actually exist. It's a funny thing. Another yin yang. Eastern philosophy says there is no self, and science agrees. 99% of everything you think and of everything you do is for yourself, and there isn't one. I like that one. The Western view is the self is a pilot, and the Eastern view is the self is an illusion. Science supports the Eastern view. Quantum physics supports the idea that this world is a manifestation of consciousness. Not that consciousness arises from random firings of neurons in a brain. From the standpoint that science recognizes this Eastern view in quantum physics, is that consciousness is a requirement for reality to exist. No consciousness, no reality. Well, potential to be reality. But deep, deep down inside the core of each one of us is this person here, this innocent life spirit of I am, that is filled with the wonder of a child, that everything that you experience is brand new, that the very first time you ever saw somebody's face or heard someone's voice, or the very first time you put your little foot in the grass, or the first time you saw a flower or a bird or a tree, that's what it's like to be in the midst of the present moment now. Everything strips away, and you're at the baseline of the moment of wonder where everything is constantly new and a great wonder. Forever, cosmically, the originator of worlds. You could just replace this with the child. The the grandest child of all creation in multiple dimensions, where the cycle of life from birth through young and adulthood and age, and young adulthood and age, and young adulthood and age, forever, as the soul refines itself on its epic journey to find out the meaning of I. Until you finally get there and hold on to it longer and longer and longer until you don't go through this cycle anymore, but it's not necessary to go to school anymore to find out. You become a creator of worlds in your own right. You're in co-partnership with the universe at large. You see the patterns and the symbols, the sacred geometries everywhere. You realize yourself. You make yourself more real. The realization is making more real, arriving at a more real place. Which is the sort of the I am place. I am here, I am now. And in the center of all that is Pranava, the sound symbol of Brahman, the ultimate supreme reality. And in the center of that reality is a vibration. A vibration that coalesces into all things we know and see and experience through all of time and space. All of us are in this together. We appear to have separate bodies, but deep underneath, we're all connected together in a global, collective, unconscious, big mind. The big mind we're trying to touch here with the use of science and sound and binaural beats and all the rest of all of this craziness that we're doing together with a set of headphones, all of it is to touch that deeper place of ourselves for sort of the highest purpose of humankind. So it's my joy and pleasure to be with you, fellow travelers, seekers after truth. So here's your headphones. Let's put those on. And here we go. Oh, thank you all for being here. I'm going to leave the chat up for a little while, so feel free to converse together. Thank you all very much. I'll see you next time.